A former #1 overall pick in the game of basketball might be on the move. Zion Williamson, his time in New Orleans, it could be coming to an end. I just told y'all, former #1 overall pick, but he's had some off-the-court distractions arise as of late. But also remember, on the court, he rarely is available due to injuries. Now, the relationship between him and the team is growing sour, and he has minimal relationship, that's what people are saying, with his teammates. Rarely do you see a #1 overall pick potentially being shopped already, but that's what we're seeing. It is chaos with Zion Williamson. Slick, you have covered the league for 30-plus years now. You know the game of basketball better than anybody on daily television. So tell me, is it time for the Pelicans to move on from #1 pick Zion Williamson?
It is not time, because they would be selling damaged goods at this point. Yes, there are plenty of indications that they are listening. They let go Teresa Weatherspoon, who was an assistant coach who was very close to Zion. So this isn't just innuendo and rumor. There's some truth to it. To what level remains to be determined. But the time to move him was either when he was an all-star for the first time and showed that he could play 60 games and what his potential was, or even earlier last season when he came back and demonstrated that all-star level ability again before once again getting injured. Now you have this cloud hanging over him. No one's seen him play since January. So you're not going to get the best offer, especially if we're talking about making a deal going into the draft or for the draft. Yep. There are going to be all sorts of conditions put on the draft picks that you might get for Zion in terms of how many games he plays or when he plays.
Like, for those at home who might even wonder why this conversation is occurring right now, right here, #1 pick Zion Williamson, add some context to what has occurred with Zion since he's been drafted 4 years ago. He missed the entirety of a season.
Right.
He only played 29 games.
Yep.
He has off-the-court issues. Just add some color commentary for our viewers at home.
Yeah, well, it really comes down to, is he fully invested in the New Orleans Pelicans and the development of his career? No one questions the potential of him. But it has been one injury after the other. And then because of the innuendo with his relationship with the team and the team's reaction now to some of the off-the-court things that have arisen, the question is, there's always been a question as to whether Zion is invested in the Pelicans. Now there's the question of, are the Pelicans invested in Zion?
Well said. Joy, where do you stand? Is it time for the Pelicans to make a move from that first-round pick?
No, I agree with Slick. It would feel very panicky and reactionary, and I don't know that you would get what you really need to get for a #1 overall pick if you tried to make this move right now. Now, the Pelicans may no longer care because, as we have mentioned, Zion, for all his potential and the sheer really beauty and joy of watching him play basketball when he is available and the effectiveness that he is when he's available, he is never available. And it is a huge problem. He's played 114 games of a possible 308. That is wild. We've never seen him play basketball. So he's bordering, and it's not time quite yet, but he's bordering on a bust for the Pelicans specifically. Like, he's going to have some more years in his career, but all of the questions that people had about Zion coming into the league have been answered. Is he going to be able to maintain his body with an NBA schedule? The answer has been unequivocally no. Will he invest in putting himself together in the fashion that he can play as dynamically as he plays with an NBA body and NBA schedule? Is he going to eat right? Is he going to train right? Is he going to rehab right? No, no, no. We constantly get these answers from around Zion. So it's not really the Pelicans' fault in that they had no choice. They had to take Zion Williamson. There's been conversations about if Ja Morant should have went over him. We have those answers. You had to take Zion if you were in the spot. But Zion has not lived up to his end of the bargain when it comes to being available, and a lot of that is reportedly because he's not invested. The problem is with this league, after a while, everyone kind of knows what your work ethic is. Everyone kind of knows how you approach the game. It's a very small circle, the NBA. People talk to each other. Trainers talk to each other. Coaches talk to each other. So if you're going to move him, you're not going to fleece anybody else. So I really don't know where this leaves the Pelicans with him.
2-5.
I say you stick with him. Don't panic yet. I think that the Pelicans, they've been bad for a very long time. And I think that they're finally getting better. I think if Zion can stay healthy, I mean, we've seen what type of generational talent he truly has. I mean, he's probably the most explosive player I've seen play basketball. We just got to find a way to get him healthy. And if that's more of fines or more of the stipulation you can put in there with the contracts, nowadays with discipline, about your weight. You talk about Miami's, how they've been running their franchise for so long. They're big on that. They're big on, you got to maintain your certain weight. If not, there's big-ass fines for you if you don't meet these requirements. So I think that Zion needs to go through something like that because we know what this team can be. You got Brandon Ingram that's on the team. You got C.J. McCollum that's on the team. You got some players. And you need to have that type of players to deal in the West. So I wouldn't get rid of them yet.
I think I would move on. And, Slick, the reason I would move on is because everything you all are talking about makes sense from an economic perspective. You do not want to buy high, drafting him #1 overall, and sell low. It makes sense. But if you can't sell, period, then I'm not worried about selling low. See, I think about Zion. Right now, he's not contributing to the team as it stands. They were in a play-in game this year that he didn't even play in. So you got to make that math for me. Last year, they made it to the playoffs, and he didn't even play. So what is Zion actually contributing to this team? If I can sell for anything, then I don't care how low I have to sell. Beggars cannot be choosers. I don't always adhere to that phrase, but it is very literal in this moment. He's not contributing when they need him most. Yeah. He wasn't in the playoffs last year. He didn't play in the play-in game this year. So what the heck am I holding on to him for, Slick?
Yeah.
Because he's 22. I'm gonna cut you off real quick. He's 22 years old, Acho. He got a lot of basketball to play. So my thing is, you go through the ups and downs right now, and eventually I think that he would change.
Yeah. Well, and
he's only 22. He's only 22 now.
It's also what he can do when you do see him play.
Okay.
The last time we saw him play was against Philadelphia. He had 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists in 28 minutes. 10 for 12 from the floor. Like, it's the idea of what he could be in a place like New Orleans that is never going to be able to get a free agent of his potential magnitude to come to New Orleans. So you were lucky enough to get the #1 pick and have the opportunity to draft a Zion. And look, when he plays, he's electric. Yeah. He's must-see TV. They are a different team. You can see that. And so it's basically saying, you know what? We no longer believe that we're ever going to get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It looks good. And Acho, I'm not mad at you for saying, hey, look, it looks good, it sounds good, but it hasn't been consistently good. It's time for the New Orleans Pelicans to turn the page. I get that, but I also understand why they might be reluctant to do that because, to Shady's point, 22 years old, and he's given you glimpses of something. Look, from the very beginning, I will say, 6'7", 280 pounds, when we say we've never seen anything like it, I've always said there's a reason, because that physically just physical dynamic is not going to allow you to play an 82-game season. But that said, man, when he does play, it is something.
Yeah, the whole 114 games that he's played in 4 years.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that.
Get him on that court.
But that idea that if somehow we can get him for 50, 60, even 50, 60 games, right? We can get him for a postseason. We can. Look, the Clippers are doing the same thing with Kawhi Leonard. It's not that different.
Yeah. But how has that worked? 2, you all, this is not fantasy basketball, 2-5. We're talking about real life. You want to get him for even 60 games. You've seen that once in 4 years. So there's a 25% chance, Slick, not my subjective opinion. The objective data states there's a 25% chance that he'll play even 60 games. There's a 0% chance he'll play 70. So you're more likely to see him play no games than you are to see him play 60.
But you say that, so then how much leverage there is to trade him? If you're saying that he's never playing, why would a team want to take Zion? Because he got a big contract.
Because there will be people who have the mindset, I believe, like you two on the far end, which is if we can just get him out there. The Pelicans know best. They know you can't get him out there. They also know the legitimacy or lack thereof of all the off-the-court issues. So the Pelicans actually know the dirty work. Yeah. They're better off moving him to a team that doesn't.
But to Slick's point, different organizations have different prerogatives and standards. And they have different ways they have to sell tickets. And this is a business. And when Zion plays, again, is a big when, he is a big ticket player. So some organizations are not in the position to move off of somebody even if they don't play much. Now, look, this is a very unserious conversation. Like, we're not going to have this conversation and then simultaneously talk about them competing for a championship. Like, we're not being serious about that.
Right.
If we were, then they would have moved him, and this probably never would have happened in the first place because the culture that they brought him into wouldn't have allowed this. Obviously, none of that exists. I don't believe that this situation happens with Zion everywhere he goes. Where you go matters. And I'm not trying to be overly critical of the Pelicans, but I'm sorry, you do a lot of research on these guys before you draft them. You have to know parts of their personality. You have to interview and find out how they work. You have to interview and find out how they eat. You sit across from them and you can read whether someone is serious about what they're doing or not based off of all the information that you have. And then you have to put him in the best position to succeed. And then if he chooses not to do those things and it continues to affect your organization, then you either make a business decision to keep him there and keep trying to sell tickets and be in the conversation because you have him, or you move into a different direction and actually try and win a championship. But you can't say both.
What you're saying, that's hard to do. You telling me that you're supposed to look across a table from an 8-year-old kid and know if he's dialed in or not?
No, you have to know how to support young players. And organizations do it all the time. It's not rocket science.
I'm just saying, like, to know what you're getting, like, the draft. Like, you really don't know what you're getting. You do these interviews from every sport. You don't know what you're getting. And then another thing, to push back on you, because I don't know if I'm going for Zion or what it is, but I think he's a solid player. He obviously has some issues with being injured. But you talked about injuries off the court. I mean, I don't know about none of that. I just feel like the main issue everybody wants to talk about, oh, well, they should get rid of him because he's been injured. Let that be the case. But when they try to put things in there about off the court, he hasn't got trouble with anything with an NBA on no issues off the court.
No, but
the main issue should be about his injuries, and that should be it.
But if you're the Pelicans, and you are the reason that you're holding on to Zion is because of the appeal that he sells to the public. And now something comes out in the public that lessens that appeal, that is going to have an influence on... If you can't sell corporate tickets because of what is happening with him off the court...
You think the people now come there because of...
Not necessarily people not coming, but your ability to sell corporate sponsorships, yeah, I do
over
think
that? Over a girl... Who you deal with outside of basketball? Not the John Morant waving guns and all this other stuff. You're talking about...
If they want to use him in their advertising? Are you kidding me?
You think that's going...
You don't think corporate sponsorship... You don't...
No,
really?
I don't.
You don't think...
Because of who you date, it's a million guys. It's a million players 25 and down. I'm like 30 and down that have baby mamas or girls that come out and talk about him. That's not him on the court.
Not the one.
He's not breaking no laws.
Ones that are the face of your franchise. Name one. I can't name a guy who's gone through what Zion is going on.
I've seen worse than guys come out.
And I don't even...
You haven't seen worse players do things
I've seen plenty.
Of...
Not then promoted as the face of the franchise, the guy that you're building around.
For all my guys out there, I won't even bring their names up. But we sat here and named some players, some of the greatest players of all time, have done stuff, and they became the face of the franchise.
Most of those players also play basketball.
Crazy. The most important thing is Zion got to get on the court. But regardless,
the tolerance for what you have going on. The tolerance for what you have going on gets much lower when you aren't providing the service that you're being paid hundreds of millions of dollars to do.
Let's just put it to injuries. That's nothing else off the court.
He definitely needs to get on the court. That is a prerogative.
He got to get on the court.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.